Hello and a warm welcome to Wellness with Will. My name is William, last name Lehong. Our guest today is Naniki Seboni, who is a cancer advocate. Naniki, welcome to Wellness with Will. Our conversation on the show usually centers around mental health, but I imagine the mental health of a cancer survivor would not necessarily compare to someone who hasn't had to battle any form of terminal illness. Thank you so much for joining us, Naniki. I mean, when we talk about stage 3 malignant melanoma, when you are finding all of this out, the mental health capacity that you need to have, or you didn't know you had at the time, I imagine is massive. Talk to me about just that moment, what happened, how you found out.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for this invitation, Will. You know, having to face your own mortality is something really strange,
right?
You know, especially at a young age, because when I was diagnosed in 2015, I was still 24.
Right.
And it looked like I had my whole life in front of me. And then here's a bombshell. And, you know, even leading up to the diagnosis itself, I don't think I was really prepared for it, because I received my biopsy results over a month after I had done my initial, like removal of the mole.
Okay.
And when my doctor sat me down, they said, you know, Ms. Seboni, you have stage 3 malignant melanoma, to which I said, what is that? And they said, it's skin cancer.
Right.
And I responded by saying, but I'm black, because sure, I know what skin cancer is,
right,
but as far as I know, or believe, I guess at the time, is that it's a white person disease.
Right.
So here I am faced with, you know, a deadly disease, and I have major misconceptions about the disease as well. So
sure.
I guess in that moment, I almost even went into a space where I started believing that, you know, this cancer was going to be the death of me.
Right.
So I wasn't in a good space to handle that diagnosis, if I'm really being honest with you.
And you are a young person at 24, just finding out that perhaps your life could be shortened. I imagine you have ambitions of your life. You have a certain trajectory of where you'd like to be at a certain point in your life. But now being faced with the reality that that might not necessarily happen, where does your mind go and how do you deal with that in that moment?
I'd say pre-cancer Naniki was carefree. Pre-cancer Naniki had big dreams.
Right.
And I was intentionally going after those dreams.
Sure.
And at the time, in fact, of my diagnosis, I, you know, was pursuing a career in radio.
Okay.
Ask me now if I'm in radio.
Are you in radio?
Nope. So cancer, in a sense, just toppled everything that I had imagined for myself. The pre-cancer Naniki, like I said, was such a go-getter, and having gone through this disease and the diagnosis, having to deal with it, the treatment as well, is that it changed who I am,
sure,
how I now look at life. I'm more anxious, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay.
More anxious about my health, more anxious about my loved ones, you know, health as well. I'm having to dream different dreams as well.
What does that mean? How have you now changed course or recalibrated your compass, so to speak?
I had to recalibrate. I didn't have a choice with it, right? Because in that time, everything almost seemed like it was falling into place. And then I'm facing my own mortality, and I have to come to terms with, number one, what is cancer? Number two, what is a stage 3 diagnosis? And then number 3, melanoma, malignant melanoma in itself. I had to go through like cancer 3 different ways to understand, you know, what would my life look like?
Sure.
The great thing, I guess, for myself was that I didn't have to go through chemotherapy like most patients do. I didn't have to go through radiation like most patients do. I only went the surgical intervention. But now, even with that, I had to go back to the doctors and say, did we do everything we could do? Because as far as I know and understand, the things about cancer, the treatments about cancer, is that where's my chemo? Where's my radiation? Of course, I didn't want to go through that.
Right.
But I thought to myself, well, if I'm already here, we might as well. But that's the strange thing about cancer is that, you know, our cancer journeys are as different as our fingerprints.
Right.
Nobody's journey is going to be exactly like mine. So there I am now having to recalibrate everything that I had understood about the disease and what it would mean for my life. So radio went this way, and then purpose, you know, moved me in a different way. I speak about position, pay, and purpose in one of my keynote speeches, and I say, you know, for the longest time I was fighting for positions in school, in life, at work.
Right.
I wanted to be this particular person. I want people to know me in this particular way. You know, I want this.
Yes.
And it wasn't happening that way. And then I found myself in a space where pain, you know, was almost debilitating in my life. I lost my father, and then soon after that, I had the cancer diagnosis.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, God, now what am I supposed to do with my life here? Where am I going? Because I'm feeling lost. I feel like I don't know where I'm going. What is the purpose of my life? Because I thought that I was just about to die a few months ago, and I'm still here.
Right.
And then almost in an unintentional way, the position fell into place. The pain was a message for cancer awareness. And I found purpose again as a cancer awareness facilitator and speaker.
So that redirection almost happened automatically because you're now in a new environment, so to speak.
Yeah.
Being confronted or faced with a new reality. Let's talk about that and that activism, right? When you are, I imagine these experiences also happened when you were much younger. What was that like, and how did you deal with it as a young Naniki?
Yeah. When you speak of experiences, what kind of experiences?
So you said you were 24 when you found out that it's stage 3 cancer, but I imagine there must have been signs even way before, even when you were a little girl, right? Because it doesn't become stage 3 within a year. Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to. So let's take it back even further back when you were a young girl. What were you seeing in your life that, okay, perhaps I'm different than others?
Oh, we dare to be different. So one of the, I guess, notable things that was happening in my life at the time, I think I was between the ages of 7 to 8 when I developed my first mole. But that mole only came after I was experiencing severe and multiple nosebleeds and sunburns from the ages of about 5 to 7.
Okay.
So I was having all these constant nosebleeds, these sunburns that were just unbearable, and this little light-skinned girl is just burning every time she's in the sun.
Right.
And, you know, God bless my mom, she really tried by telling me, don't play in the sun.
Right.
How dare you?
How are you going to keep a child from playing in the sun?
You know, so I was experiencing challenges definitely when I was playing outside, and then I got to school and I started to swim. So because I was one of the swimmers, it was compulsory for us to use sunscreen.
Sure.
Now here's this little black girl being forced to use sunscreen. What is this? We don't really understand it. But my mom said, we're gonna use it because we want to support her with her swimming, right?
Yes.
And so that's the only time when I was using sunscreen, because I don't think we really understood the usage of this particular product. Sunscreen, you know,
the science of it.
Yeah, you know. So I'm trying to use sunscreen at this little young age, but there's still more that's happening in my life. So then I developed my first mole, my first notable mole, and I call it the jelly tot mole because it literally looked like a jelly tot.
Okay.
And you can see from here, I've got this scar over there. But at the time, as a little 7-year-old, kids are teasing me about it. Oh, it's ugly, you know, just really negative things. And as a kid, you're like, okay, I don't want this. Mommy, please help me with this. And my mom decides, oh, she's gonna put a sewing thread around it. And this happened on 2 separate occasions. I will never advise that to anyone. Do not ever do that.
I can only imagine how excruciating that pain must have been.
It really was.
And for an 8-year-old Naniki, it must have, unbearable.
It really was. But I think at the time, I really wanted this thing to be gone so I could grin and bear it.
Right.
Eventually it fell off, I was done with it, or so we thought.
Yeah.
I continue with my life. I'm still having, challenges with my skin. If I'm in the sun for too long, I'm getting those sunburns. And then those sunburns turn themselves into eczema.
Okay.
And now this is now a whole other thing with my skin. What is eczema? We need to deal with this. But oh goodness, have I ever gone to a dermatologist this entire time?
No.
Honey. And then varsity comes, but throughout this time, I'm still developing moles, multiple moles around, my body, but they're not as notable as the first one.
Okay.
And then I develop the deadly one, the melanoma mole, the black mole. And this thing is, it's not asymmetrical, number one. The border is irregular.
Okay.
It looks like it's almost spilling out of itself.
Oh, wow.
The color keeps changing. If you look at it from like this angle, it looks dark brown, it looks black, it looks purple.
Right.
Disgusting.
Okay.
And the size of it keeps evolving as well. From a little tiny little black mole, and it, keeps growing. And something's wrong here.
Yes.
Am I still at the dermatologist? No. I'm still sitting with this thing, and my white friends, my white lecturers are telling me, you need to get that thing checked out. My black friends, family members, Oskawara, you have multiple moles all over your body. It's just one of those. And this thing,
yeah.
And this thing just kept growing, was more painful, and eventually I hit myself against a coffee table and it opened up almost like a flap.
Ouch.
And I tell you, in that moment, I knew this thing needed to go. But still, it took me another 2 years to get it out.
Was this because there was a fear of just being in hospital and being operated on, or just not understanding fully medically what this meant? Not only by yourself, but I imagine those around you, your mom, your family.
I don't think we understood medically, what this could mean for me. I don't think it was a matter of, I don't want to go to the hospital.
Sure.
It was definitely a misunderstanding that I had with regards to what this could mean for my life. So, once we got there, it was like, it's a little too late to cry about it.
Let's talk about now, fast forward to present day. A lot of people that watch Wellness with Will are watching to get tips on how to deal or cope with stresses in their lives. And it's obviously layered, right? And there isn't a silver bullet or a one blanket solution for everybody. But there are people who understand the need for this conversation. How do you now live? I'll just keep it simple in that way, because you are now obviously someone who's gone through so much, but you are on the other side telling your story, right? It took a lot of mental capacity to get to this point. I imagine there would have been moments in your life when you felt depressed.
Yeah.
And how did you deal with that, and how are you dealing with it now?
Well, that's a tough one, because just dealing with cancer as a whole was, like I said, having to deal with this about it. And like I said, the misconceptions I had about the disease, I really had to shift my mindset.
Sure.
From March, right, in 2015 when I got my diagnosis, to September when I went in for my surgery, I had checked out, completely checked out.
Right, you were in the clear.
No, mentally.
Oh, okay.
Mentally, I had checked out. I couldn't face this diagnosis. I didn't know what it meant for me. And at that time, I believed that cancer was a death sentence.
Sure.
So I went into this diagnosis believing that I wasn't gonna make it maybe past the end of the year.
Right.
So I'm not going to fight it. I'm not gonna fight this cancer. I'm just gonna let go. So what I did with that is now, succumbing to the notion that obviously I'm going to pass away from this thing. But if you were to ask my mom how I was in those 6 months, she'd tell you that I was cut off. I wasn't communicating with her, I was depressed.
Right.
If you spoke to my partner then, he'd tell you that I was angry. I had started to adopt a very aggressive tone in my speech.
You were numb to the world.
I really was. If you asked my closest friend, they would have told you that I was stressed beyond measure, to the point where it was manifesting itself through, I had these involuntary head twitches. I couldn't stop it.
Right.
And I remember, looking into my mother's eyes when she saw this for the first time when I went to see her, and she said, "Naniki man, and I told her, I can't stop it.
Right.
I'm not doing it on purpose. My body, my mind, everything that, I'm connected to was just spasming. And mentally, I just wasn't in a good place to deal with this diagnosis.
Right.
I was depressed beyond measure, and I never thought about ending my life, but I also wasn't proactive in making sure that cancer didn't take my life.
I get you. We are thankful that you are here today and you are sharing your story. We're going to take a quick ad break. This is Wellness with Will. When we come back, we'll talk to Naniki about some of the social initiatives that she's doing, making sure that you as a young person, as a human, understand what cancer is, and she'll tell you also about all the support groups that you can join. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Wellness with Will. Our guest today is Naniki Seboni, who is a cancer survivor. Where we continue our conversation before the ad break, you were sharing just the story of how it is you were able to come out the other side. The fact that you're sitting here today telling your story. I imagine there are a lot more people that will find value or find comfort in knowing that I can beat this thing. Usually that is the theme in terms of conversations around cancer patients and survivors. What sort of social work are you doing in terms of just reaching out to people and encouraging them to understand and know that it's not necessarily a death sentence?
So I think for me, and I actually had this conversation last week or 2 weeks ago, I host a cancer support group on the October Health app, and we convene with cancer patients and their caregivers, and actually the bulk of the people in that group are caregivers, which I find really interesting. And I said to them, do you have a cancer assignment? What is the cancer assignment? So if you've gone through cancer either through diagnosis of self or your loved one, some people feel compelled to give back, to work with patients, to work with caregivers, to work in NPOs and all kinds of spaces. So I said to them, what's your cancer assignment? Because I figured out that I had an assignment with this thing, right? And one thing that I find my absolute joy in is going to schools. And teaching the young ones about early detection, because something that I, only realized afterwards is that all the things that I was going through at that young age, if somebody had actually stopped me and said, hey,
it could be this,
my whole life could have changed. Right. So I'm now trying to be that person for somebody else. And what better person than the most unlikely, the black girl with the white people disease, So I find great comfort in doing that work. Going to the schools, speaking on the stages, corporates, you name it, I'm that girl, call me, right? But then you find caregivers, other patients who also want to get involved. And I say you really need to have that internal conversation, and if you are a person who believes, who prays, pray about it. So that you are aligned with your story, with your assignment, so that you're not cheating the system. Don't cheat the cancer patients with what you're going to give them. Because you come into that space and a lot of people are vulnerable. Mentally, we're not strong. We're still going through all kinds of treatments. Physically, we're not strong. So
some have already checked out, as you said.
So you want to have a person who has found what their assignment is, what their purpose is, and really, if you are a praying person, pray about it and say, God, lead me so that I can do your work.
I appreciate that so much. How do we reach you? How do we get you to come and speak to us and our children in our schools? Is there a platform that you're on where people can just get access to your work perhaps?
Across all social media platforms, it's my name and surname, Naniki Seboni. And in the next couple of months, I'm trying to do another school tour, melanoma awareness school tour.
Okay.
I did it in Soweto last year, and because that's where I'm from, right? So I need to give back to the community, and I want to continue with that work. So if there's anybody who's listening who can support me on this endeavor, you know, give the sunscreen to the kids. It's not for me, I'm not using it.
Right.
It's for the kids. You know, I wear these sleeves when I'm driving or if I'm running, hiking.
Right.
And I give those out to the kids because we may not be able to afford sunscreen. It's really expensive. If you're giving it to somebody who sometimes goes to, you know, to bed without food, and then you're like, give me like 300 rand bottle of sunscreen. That's not realistic. So I give these sleeves away to the kids just to help them, you know, make sure that they are at least protected from the sun and they can, you know, take better care of themselves. Because like I said, I'm very anxious when it comes to my health, and I don't want anybody else to go through that.
Thank you so much, Naniki, for being here. And we appreciate you making the time, and all the best with all the work that you are doing, and good luck with the tour around the schools in Soweto.
I really, really appreciate it. So just anybody, you know, just a final word that I could say to people, and this is something that I always say when I end my talks, is that, you know, I think when it comes to the cancer space, we go into it thinking that we're no longer the same person, or that we're half a person, we less than. A lot of people have found purpose after the cancer. So anybody out there that's going through this disease, know and understand and believe truly in your heart that you are love, that you are strength, and you are greatness beyond cancer.
I love that. You are greatness beyond cancer. What is your cancer assignment? Very pertinent question from Naniki Seboni, our guest today, who is a cancer activist. Thanks for watching Wellness with Will. See you next time.